Jake Morrison walked slowly toward the center of the massive council chamber. His black suit was simple and clean, unlike the colorful robes and shining armor worn by the alien delegates around him. Behind him, 5 other humans followed in a straight line. Their faces showed no fear, no anger, just quiet determination. The chamber was huge, bigger than any stadium on Earth. Hundreds of alien species sat in curved rows that went up toward the ceiling. Some had tentacles instead of arms. Others had multiple eyes or strange-colored skin. A few looked almost human, but with small differences that made them clearly not from Earth. Lisa Grant, the second human in line, carried a sealed folder in her hands. She had worked as Earth's trade representative for 8 years. Today would be her last day in that job. The Zephyrian delegate clicked his insect-like mouthparts as Jake reached the speaking platform. His name was Kefler, and he had made it clear many times that he did not like humans. His species looked like giant praying mantises with 4 arms and compound eyes that reflected the chamber's lights. "Human Ambassador Morrison," Kefler said in his buzzing voice, "you have requested this emergency session. State your business quickly. The council has important matters to discuss." Jake looked around the chamber. He had stood in this same spot dozens of times over the past 3 years. Each time, he had tried to build bridges between Earth and the hundreds of worlds represented here. Each time, he had been met with suspicion, restrictions, and demands that humans slow down their expansion into space. "Honored delegates," Jake began, his voice carrying clearly through the translator systems. 3 years ago, humanity joined this council with hope in our hearts. We came here as friends, eager to learn from species with thousands of years more experience than us. Several alien delegates shifted in their seats. The Arcturian representative, a blue-skinned humanoid named Velshin, tapped his clawed fingers on his desk. The Valkyrie delegate Rixtal, whose crystalline body caught the light like a living diamond, leaned forward with interest. "We offered to share our technology," Jake continued. "We opened our medical research to help cure diseases that had plagued your worlds for centuries. We shared our agricultural techniques to help feed hungry populations. We even offered our military assistance when the Outer Rim faced pirate attacks." The chamber grew quieter. Some delegates looked uncomfortable, as if they knew where this speech was heading. "In return," Jake said, his voice growing harder, "you have placed limits on how many worlds we can settle. You have restricted our trade routes. You have demanded that we ask permission before exploring new star systems. You have treated us not as partners, but as children who need to be controlled." Kefler's mandibles clicked angrily. "Your species expands too fast. You claim too much space. You build too many ships. The younger races must learn patience and respect for the established order." Jake nodded slowly. "Patience. Yes, we have heard that word many times in these chambers. You tell us to be patient when our colonies need supplies. You tell us to be patient when our scientists make discoveries that could help everyone. You tell us to be patient when pirates attack our trade ships and we ask for help." Lisa stepped forward and handed Jake the sealed folder. He opened it and pulled out a simple piece of paper with official seals from Earth's government. "The United Earth Council has voted unanimously," Jake announced. "Humanity formally withdraws from the Galactic Council, effective immediately." The chamber exploded into noise. Aliens shouted in dozens of languages. The translator system struggled to keep up with the chaos. Several delegates jumped to their feet, their various appendages waving in the air. Rixtal raised one of her crystal arms high. The light reflecting from her body created rainbow patterns on the walls. "You cannot simply leave," she called out over the noise. "No species has ever withdrawn from the council. It is not done." Jake waited for the noise to die down. When it was quiet enough, he smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. "Then we will be the first," he said simply. The hegemony delegate, a massive creature that looked like a walking tree with tentacles for branches, spoke in a voice like grinding stone. This is foolish, humans. You need the Council more than. The Council needs you. Where will you go? What will you do without our protection and trade networks? Lisa stepped up to the microphone next to Jake. We will do what humans have always done, she said. We will find our own way. She opened her own folder and began reading. All human diplomatic missions will be recalled within 30 days. All trade agreements between Earth and Council species are terminated. All joint research projects will be concluded or transferred to Council control. All human military support for Council operations will cease immediately. The noise in the chamber started again, but this time it was different. Instead of anger, there was worry in the voices. Fear, even. The Ilari delegate, a tall, thin being with large black eyes, stood up. Her species had worked closely with human scientists for years. Ambassador Morrison, surely we can discuss this. The Ilari have greatly benefited from human medical research. Your doctors have saved millions of lives on our worlds. Jake looked at her with something like sadness in his eyes. Dr. Carol White and her team have worked tirelessly with your people. They considered the Ilari to be true friends. But friendship requires respect, and respect has been in short supply in these chambers. The Nexus Collective representative, a mechanical being that rarely spoke, activated its vocal systems. Query: are humans willing to maintain technological exchange agreements outside Council framework? No, Lisa answered firmly. No agreements, no exchanges, no contact. Humanity is done with galactic politics. Velshin of the Arcturians stood up, his blue skin now pale with worry. You cannot mean this. The economic disruption alone would affect hundreds of worlds. Human manufacturing techniques, human trade routes, human innovations, they are integrated into our entire economic system. Jake picked up his folder and closed it. Then you should have thought about that before treating us like dangerous children who needed to be locked in a cage. The chamber fell silent again. The reality of what was happening was sinking in. Humanity was not making empty threats or trying to negotiate for better terms. They were actually leaving. Kefler clicked his mandibles nervously. This is madness. You will regret this decision. Without the Council's protection, your scattered colonies will be vulnerable to attack. Without our trade networks, your economy will collapse. You need us. Jake started walking toward the exit. The other humans fell into line behind him. Just before reaching the door, he turned around one last time. Maybe we do need you, he said quietly. But you made it clear that you did not need us. You made it clear that our friendship, our help, our partnership was not wanted. So we are giving you exactly what you asked for, a galaxy without humans in it. He paused, looking directly at Kefler. I hope you find it to be everything you dreamed it would be. The heavy doors of the Council chamber closed behind the human delegation with a sound like thunder. For several minutes, no one in the chamber spoke. The reality of what had just happened was too big to understand all at once. Finally, Rixtal's crystal voice broke the silence. What have we done? But there was no answer. The humans were gone, and they had taken their friendship, their innovation, and their unique perspective with them. For the first time in the Galactic Council's long history, a species had chosen to walk away, and as the delegates slowly filed out of the chamber, many of them wondered if they would ever see humans again. More importantly, they wondered if they would want to, and if the humans would ever want to see them. Captain Ben Parker stood on the bridge of the transport ship, Eagle's Wing, and watched the encrypted message appear on his screen. The words were short and simple, but they made his heart beat faster. Operation Homeward is go. Begin Phase 1. Immediately. He had been waiting for this message for 3 months, ever since the human delegation had walked out of the Galactic Council chambers. Every human in space had been waiting for it. Now it was time to show the galaxy what humans could do when they worked together. Ben turned to his communications officer, a young woman named Kate Miller. "Send the signal to all ships in the fleet," he said quietly. "Use the special frequency. Tell them the vacation is over and it's time to go home." Kate nodded and began typing on her console. Across human space, similar messages were being sent. To every colony, every space station, every mining operation, and every research facility. The largest coordinated movement in human history was about to begin. On the planet New Geneva, Governor Amy Sullivan stood in her office looking out at the city she had helped build over the past 10 years. The tall buildings gleamed in the morning sun, and the streets were full of people going about their daily lives. Most of them had no idea that everything was about to change. Her assistant, Kevin Brooks, knocked on the door and entered. He carried a tablet with long lists of names and numbers. "The evacuation ships are starting to arrive," he said. "The first wave should be here by tomorrow." Amy sighed and turned away from the window. "How long do we have?" 6 months for complete evacuation, Kevin replied. "Priority goes to essential personnel first, then families with children, then everyone else. The industrial equipment gets moved last." Amy nodded. New Geneva had been one of humanity's most successful colonies. The alien species had always pointed to it as an example of human expansion being too fast and too aggressive. Now they would get their wish. The planet would be empty within 6 months. "What about the infrastructure?" Amy asked. "The power plants, the water treatment facilities, the transportation networks?" Kevin consulted his tablet. "Orders are to dismantle everything we can move and destroy everything we can't. Nothing gets left behind that aliens can use." Across the galaxy, similar conversations were happening on dozens of human worlds. On Kepler Station, Commander Rick Hayes supervised teams of engineers as they began dismantling the massive mining equipment that had made the station profitable. The rare Earth elements found in the asteroid field had been highly valued by alien traders. Now every piece of machinery was being carefully packed for transport. "Are we really taking everything?" asked his chief engineer, a man named Tony Clark. Rick watched as a huge mining laser was detached from its mounting and loaded onto a cargo ship. "Everything," he confirmed. "Every bolt, every wire, every computer chip. When we leave, this place will be nothing but empty tunnels and dead rocks." The aliens were slow to understand what was happening. For the first few weeks after the council meeting, many alien leaders assumed that humans were just making empty threats. They expected humanity to come back to the negotiating table with their tails between their legs, ready to accept whatever terms the council offered. The Arcturian Trade Union was the first to realize that something bigger was happening. Velshan, their chief negotiator, had tried to contact Earth 3 times in the past month. Each time, he received the same polite but firm response: "Humanity is no longer accepting diplomatic communications. Please direct all inquiries to your local human embassy for assistance with closing procedures." Worried about losing profitable trade deals, Velshan decided to visit Earth in person. His ship, the Blue Dawn, arrived at Earth's orbital space 3 weeks after the council meeting. What he found there shocked him. The massive orbital stations that had served as trade hubs were almost empty. The few humans still there were busy packing equipment into cargo containers. When Velshan requested permission to dock, he was directed to a small maintenance bay instead of the grand diplomatic dock he had used many times before. Admiral Susan Clark met him at the airlock. She was a tall woman with gray hair and tired eyes. She had been managing Earth's orbital defenses for 15 years and had worked with alien traders for most of that time. "Admiral Clark," Velshan said, extending his hand in the human greeting. He had learned, "I am here to discuss the recent misunderstanding between our peoples. Surely we can find a solution that benefits everyone." Susan shook his hand but did not smile. I'm afraid there's no misunderstanding, Ambassador Velshan. Humanity has made its decision. We are withdrawing from all galactic affairs. Velshan looked around the nearly empty station. But this is madness. The trade relationships we have built over the years, the joint projects, the mutual benefits, you cannot simply abandon all of this. We're not abandoning anything, Susan replied calmly. We're taking it with us. She led him to an observation window that looked out into space. Hundreds of ships moved between Earth and the orbital stations, carrying cargo containers and equipment. The ships were of all sizes, from small personal transports to massive industrial haulers. Where are you taking it all? Velshan asked. Susan turned to look at him directly. That's not your concern anymore, Ambassador. Humanity appreciates your past business relationship, but we are no longer accepting new contracts or extending existing ones. I must ask you to complete your business here and depart within 24 hours. Velshan tried to argue, but Susan was polite and firm. There would be no negotiations, no discussions, and no changes to humanity's decision. The Arcturian left Earth space feeling confused and worried. The Zephyrians were the next to investigate. A military scout ship commanded by Officer Ketan arrived at the human research station on Titan's Edge 2 months after the council meeting. The station had been studying exotic matter and had made several important discoveries that benefited the entire galaxy. What Ketan found when he arrived was not what he expected. The station was completely abandoned, but it had not been left empty. Every piece of equipment had been removed. Every computer had been wiped clean. Every research sample had been taken or destroyed. The station was structurally intact, but it was like finding a house where someone had removed every stick of furniture, every light bulb, and even the wiring from the walls. Ketan's report to his superiors was short and disturbing. The humans did not simply leave. They conducted the most thorough evacuation I have ever seen. Nothing of value remains. It is as if they never existed here at all. Similar reports began coming in from across human space. On the agricultural world of Prairie Home, human farmers had not only harvested their crops but had also taken their specialized seeds, their farming equipment, and even the bacteria they used to enhance soil fertility. The fields were empty and would return to wild grassland within a few seasons. On the research station Deep Thought, human scientists had been working with alien partners on advanced physics projects. When the alien partners arrived for their next scheduled meeting, they found empty laboratories and a note thanking them for their collaboration, but explaining that all human-initiated projects were being terminated. The most disturbing discovery came from the mining world of Iron Ridge. Human miners had been extracting rare metals that were essential for alien technology. When hegemony inspectors arrived to check on production schedules, they found that the humans had not only removed all their equipment, but had also collapsed the mine shafts and sealed the entrances. Years of work and billions of credits worth of infrastructure had been deliberately destroyed rather than left for alien use. The economic impact began to hit within the first month. Human trade routes had connected species that would not normally deal with each other directly. Human manufacturers had developed efficient processes that many alien worlds depended on. Human innovations had become integrated into alien technology in ways that were only now becoming obvious. On the Valkyrie homeworld, factories that used human-designed assembly techniques began shutting down when replacement parts became unavailable. The Alari medical centers found themselves short of supplies when human pharmaceutical companies stopped shipping products. The Nexus Collective discovered that 30% of their manufacturing processes relied on human-invented techniques that were now unavailable. Council President Morketh called an emergency session to address the growing crisis. "We must find a way to bring the humans back to the negotiating table," he announced to the assembled delegates. "The economic disruption is spreading faster than we anticipated." But when the council tried to contact human leaders, they found that humanity had kept its word. Every embassy was closed. Every diplomatic channel was shut down. Every human representative had returned to human space, leaving behind only automated messages explaining that their species was no longer participating in galactic affairs. For the first time in galactic history, an entire species had simply walked away from the community of worlds. And as alien leaders began to understand the full scope of what humans had built and what they had taken with them, a new feeling began to grow in the council chambers. It was a feeling that none of them wanted to admit, but that all of them were beginning to understand. For all their talk about humans being too aggressive, too fast, too uncontrolled, Council Intelligence Director Morgan walked slowly into the emergency meeting room, his 4 eyes dim with exhaustion. He had spent the last 3 months investigating reports from across the galaxy, and what he had discovered kept him awake. At night, the folder in his hands contained information that would change how the Council viewed humanity forever. The emergency session had been called by President Morkith after economic reports showed that galactic trade had dropped by 20% in just 4 months. Representatives from 50 major species sat around the curved table, their faces showing worry and confusion. Director Morgan, President Morkith said, gesturing with one of his tentacles toward the speaking platform. Please share your findings with the Council. Morgan activated the holographic display and began his presentation. The first image showed a map of known space with human territories marked in blue. 6 months ago, humans controlled or influenced 47 star systems. Today, they control 0 systems within our borders. He touched a control, and the map changed. Red dots appeared where human colonies had been. This is not a simple withdrawal. What humans have done is the most complete evacuation in galactic history. They have removed themselves so thoroughly that in some cases, we can barely tell they were ever there. The Arcturian representative, Velshan, leaned forward. But surely they left some infrastructure behind. Some settlements for us to use? Morgan shook his head. That's what makes this so remarkable. Let me show you what we found on New Geneva. The display changed to show aerial views of a planet. The first image showed a thriving human city with tall buildings, transportation networks, and industrial facilities. The second image showed the same location 6 months later. It was completely empty, not abandoned, Morgan emphasized. Empty. They dismantled everything they could move and destroyed everything they couldn't. The power plants were taken apart piece by piece. The water treatment facilities were drained and disassembled. Even the roads were torn up and the materials taken away. Delegate Riksdal's crystal body flashed with nervous energy. But why? What could they possibly do with used road materials? That's the question that has been keeping me awake, Morgan replied. They didn't just take valuable items. They took everything. Scrap metal, electronic components, even processed soil from their agricultural areas. It's as if they wanted to make sure that no trace of human presence remained. The next image showed the mining station at Kepler 442b. What had once been a massive operation extracting rare elements was now just empty tunnels and dead rock. They removed every piece of equipment, every tool, every spare part. But more than that, they sealed the mine shafts so completely that it would take years of work to reopen them. Zephyrian military officer Ketten clicked his mandibles nervously. My scouts reported similar findings throughout the outer territories. But Director, where did they take all of this material? Our long-range sensors have detected no major human construction projects in known space. Morgan's expression grew more serious. That's the part that worries me most. We have no idea where they went. Our intelligence networks have lost all contact with human space. It's as if an entire species has simply vanished. The economic advisor for the hegemony, a massive tree-like being named Velkar, spoke in his grinding voice. The economic impact is becoming severe. Human innovations were integrated into our systems more deeply than we realized. 17 major manufacturing centers have shut down because they can't get replacement parts for human-designed equipment. Chief Economist Veltar stepped forward with his own report. Human-derived technology accounts for 37% of our current manufacturing base. Their trade routes connected 43 species that rarely dealt with each other directly. Without human merchants to facilitate these relationships, trade between these species has dropped by 60%. The Alari representative, Dr. Zinara, stood up. Her large black eyes were filled with something that looked like sadness. The impact goes beyond economics. Human medical researchers were working on cures for 17 different diseases. 3 of those diseases were about to be eliminated completely, now that research has stopped. She activated her own display, showing medical statistics. Human doctors and researchers were involved in medical programs on 89 different worlds. They didn't just provide knowledge, they provided a way of thinking about problems that was different from our own approaches. Morgan nodded grimly. That brings me to the most disturbing part of my report. We have analyzed human contributions to galactic society over the past 50 years. What we found is that humans filled a role that no other species was filling. The display showed a complex diagram with interconnected lines. Other species tend to specialize. The Arcturians excel at trade and negotiation. The Zephyrians are excellent military strategists. The Alari are gifted medical researchers. The hegemony builds massive engineering projects, but humans were generalists. They were good at everything, but more importantly, they were good at connecting different areas of knowledge. He highlighted several connections on the diagram. When the Korthak plague hit the Outer Rim 3 years ago, it was human medical researchers who found the cure. But they didn't just use medical knowledge. They combined Alari biological research with Arcturian chemical analysis and Zephyrian military logistics to create a solution that none of our species could have developed alone. The chamber fell silent as the implications became clear. Velshin was the first to speak. Are you saying that humans were more valuable than we realized? I'm saying that humans filled a unique role in galactic society, Morgan replied. They were the connectors, the bridge builders, the ones who could see connections between different areas of knowledge that the rest of us missed. The Nexus Collective representative, a mechanical being designated Unit 7, activated its vocal. Systems, inquiry. What is the current status of human space? Query. Are humans establishing new settlements outside our sensor range? Morgan's expression grew even more serious. That's what we're trying to determine. Long-range sensors have detected massive energy signatures in unexplored regions of space. The signal suggests construction projects on a scale that we've never seen before. He showed a star map with mysterious energy readings marked in red. These readings are coming from systems that were thought to be uninhabitable. The energy output suggests industrial activity larger than anything in Council space. President Morketh leaned forward, his tentacles curling with anxiety. What kind of industrial activity? Unknown, Morgan admitted. But the scale is enormous. If humans are building something out there, it's bigger than any project in recorded galactic history. The Valkyrie delegate, Riksdal, flashed with urgent colors. Could they be building weapons? Are they preparing for war against the Council? Morgan shook his head. The energy signatures don't match weapons production. They look more like ... construction, massive construction. But of what, we don't know. The meeting continued for several more hours, but the conclusion was becoming clear to everyone present. Humanity had not simply left the galactic community, they had removed themselves so completely that it was as if they had never existed. And in doing so, they had taken with them capabilities and knowledge that the galaxy was only now realizing. It had lost. As the session ended, Dr. Zinara approached Morgan privately. Director, I received a message from Dr. Carol White before the humans left. She said something that has been troubling me. Morgan's 4 eyes focused on her. What did she say? She said, "We tried to show you that diversity makes us all stronger. Perhaps you'll understand that lesson when we're gone." Dr. Zinara's voice was quiet and sad. I think I'm beginning to understand what she meant. As the delegates filed out of the meeting room, many of them carried the same thought. For 50 years, humans had been part of galactic society. They had contributed, innovated, and connected. Different species in ways that had benefited everyone. But instead of appreciating this contribution, the Council had feared it. Now, as the full scope of humanity's departure became clear, a new fear was growing. Not fear of what humans might do, but fear of what the galaxy would become without them. The connections were breaking down. The innovations were stopping. The bridges between species were crumbling. And somewhere out in the unknown regions of space, humanity was building something new, something that the galaxy might never see or understand, something that they had lost the right to be part of when they chose fear over friendship. The Council had wanted a galaxy without human interference. Now they were getting exactly what they had asked for, and many of them were beginning to suspect that it was not what they had really wanted at all. The emergency alarm echoed through the Galactic Council's medical headquarters on Centris Prime. Dr. Zinara rushed down the corridor, her thin legs carrying her as fast as they could go. Behind her, other alien doctors and researchers hurried to keep up. The message that had arrived an hour ago was the worst news the medical community had received in decades. The Korthak plague had returned. Dr. Zinara burst into the emergency meeting room where medical experts from 12 different species were gathered around a holographic display. The display showed a 3-dimensional map of the outer rim territories with red dots spreading like fire from system to system. "How bad is it?" she asked Dr. Morville, the hegemony's chief medical officer. Dr. Morville's bark-like skin was pale with worry. "Worse than before. This new strain affects not just organic species, but also attacks the biomechanical systems that many species use for life support. The Signari are already reporting 20% casualties on their homeworld." Dr. Zinara stared at the spreading red dots on the map. 1 year ago, when the first Korthak outbreak had occurred, it had been contained within weeks. The solution had come from human medical researchers led by Dr. Paul Miller and Dr. Helen Ross. They had worked with alien doctors to create a treatment that used innovative combinations of different species. Medical knowledge. Have we tried to recreate the human treatment protocol? Asked Dr. Kethrim, a Zephyrian medical specialist. Dr. Morville shook his massive head. "We have the basic formula, but the humans were constantly modifying it based on new information. They had a way of adapting treatments in real time that we cannot replicate. Their approach was not just about following procedures, it was about thinking differently about the problem." Dr. Zinara pulled up the files from the previous outbreak. The human medical team had done something that still amazed her. Instead of treating the plague as a purely medical problem, they had approached it from multiple angles. They used Ilari biological research to understand how the plague attacked different species. They used Arcturian chemical analysis to identify weaknesses in the plague organism. They used Zephyrian military logistics to distribute treatments quickly across multiple worlds. "The humans didn't just treat the disease," she said quietly. "They treated the entire crisis. Medical, logistical, social, economic. They saw it all as one big problem that needed one big solution." Dr. Kethrim clicked his mandibles in frustration. "But we have all the same resources they had. We have Ilari biologists, Arcturian chemists, Zephyrian logistics experts. Why can't we do what they did?" The answer came from Dr. Velshin, an Arcturian researcher who had worked closely with the human medical team. "Because we think like our individual species. The Ilari focus on biology. The Arcturians focus on chemistry. The Zephyrians focus on logistics. But humans thought like humans. They saw connections that we don't see. The meeting continued for hours, but no breakthrough came. The plague continued to spread, and alien medical experts struggled with solutions that seemed obvious in hindsight, but impossible to implement without human insight. Meanwhile, in the military command center, on Rigel Station, Commander Kefler faced his own crisis. The Sigma Quadrant was under attack by a new type of pirate fleet that used tactics unlike anything the Zephyrian military had encountered before. "Show me the battle reports again," Kefler ordered his tactical officer. The holographic display showed the locations of recent pirate attacks. The pattern made no sense according to traditional military thinking. The pirates attacked valuable targets, but they also attacked seemingly worthless locations. They used advanced ships, but they also used old, outdated vessels. Their formations looked chaotic, but somehow they were winning battles against superior forces. "Have we tried standard counter-piracy tactics?" asked Lieutenant Zorkin. Kefler's compound eyes reflected the light from the display. "We have tried everything in our tactical manuals. Formation attacks, supply line disruption, territorial denial, nothing works. These pirates fight like no one we have ever encountered." An older officer, Commander Velther, stepped forward. "Sir, these tactics remind me of something. During the border wars 5 years ago, humans used similar unpredictable strategies against the Outer Rim cartels." Kefler turned to look at him. "What do you mean?" "Human military thinking was different from ours," Velther explained. "We plan battles like chess games, logical, structured, predictable. Humans plan battles like they were solving puzzles that had no set rules. They would combine tactics that should not work together, but somehow they made them work." The commander pulled up old battle reports from human military operations. "Look at this engagement from 3 years ago. Human ships attacked a pirate base using a combination of Zephyrian formation tactics, Arcturian stealth technology, and hegemony brute force strategies. No single species would have thought to combine these approaches, but humans made it work." Kefler studied the reports. The human approach had been to take the best ideas from different species and combine them in ways that were completely unexpected. It was not better or worse than traditional military thinking. It was different. And that difference had made them incredibly effective. "Without human strategic input," Velther continued, "our military responses have become more predictable. We fight the way Zephyrians fight, which means our enemies can prepare for us." Across the galaxy, similar problems were emerging in every area where humans had been involved. The Arcturian Trade Union was struggling with negotiations between species that had previously relied on human mediators. Without humans to bridge cultural differences, trade agreements that had taken years to build were falling apart in months. Velshan sat in his office on the Arcturian homeworld, staring at a list of failed trade negotiations. In the past year, his people had lost contracts worth billions of credits because they could not communicate effectively with certain species. "The hegemony wants us to use their negotiation style," his assistant Mordin reported. "Direct, forceful, no compromise. But the Ilari find that approach offensive and have withdrawn from talks." Velshan rubbed his temples. "And the Ilari want us to use their approach, patient, careful, consensus building. But the hegemony sees that as weakness and refuses to participate." It was a problem that humans had solved by being able to adapt their communication style to whatever worked best for each situation. They could be direct with species that preferred directness and patient with species that needed time. They could be formal when formality was required and casual when informality worked better. "Humans were like universal translators," Velshan said quietly. "Not just for language, but for culture, for thinking, for ways of approaching problems." The most devastating impact was felt in the research community. On the science station, Kepler Research, Dr. Yilmara struggled with a project that had been making steady progress for 3 years. She was trying to develop new faster-than-light communication technology that would benefit the entire galaxy. The theoretical work is complete, she told her research team. The Ilari have provided the biological components. The Arcturians have developed the chemical processes. The Nexus Collective has designed the mechanical systems. But we cannot make them work together. Her assistant, a young Valkyrie named Kurdan, looked at the scattered components on the laboratory table. What would the humans have done? Dr. Yilmara sighed. That is exactly the problem. I do not know what humans would have done. They had a way of looking at these separate pieces and seeing how they could fit together. They could take an Ilari biological process and combine it with Arcturian chemistry in ways that neither species would think of alone. She picked up a datapad with notes from the previous year's research. Dr. Nancy Scott was leading this project before the humans left. Her approach was not to focus on perfecting each component separately. Instead, she looked at how the components would interact with each other and designed them to work together from the beginning. The research station had been trying for months to recreate Dr. Scott's approach, but without success. Each species was excellent at their area of expertise, but none of them could see the project as a whole the way humans could. Similar stories were playing out across the galaxy. The Nexus Collective, a species of artificial intelligences that rarely interacted with organic life forms, had sent an unprecedented message to the Galactic Council. It was the first time in recorded history that the collective had initiated contact with the Council rather than simply responding to requests. The message was short but stunning. Query: location of human collective. Assessment: human logical innovations demonstrated superior efficiency in organic-synthetic cooperation. Request: diplomatic contact for mutual benefit agreements. Even the galaxy's artificial intelligences recognized what the Council had lost as. Reports continued to flood in from across the galaxy. A picture emerged of a galactic civilization that was slowly but steadily declining. Not collapsing, the various species were too advanced and stable for that, but losing the energy and innovation that had driven progress for the past 50 years. The connections between species were weakening. Research projects were stalling. Military responses were becoming predictable. Trade relationships were falling apart. 5 years had passed since humanity walked out of the Galactic Council chambers. President Morkith stood at the center of the Great Assembly Hall, his tentacles moving slowly as he prepared to deliver the most difficult speech of his long career. The chamber was fuller than it had been in years, with representatives from species that had not attended council meetings since the human departure. The holographic displays around the chamber showed statistics that told a story of decline. Galactic trade was down 40%. Scientific advancement had slowed to levels not seen in centuries. Military conflicts in the outer territories had increased as pirates and raiders took advantage of predictable alien responses. 12 smaller species had withdrawn from council oversight, following humanity's example. Fellow delegates, Morkith began, his voice carrying across the silent chamber. We gather today to confront a truth that many of us have been unwilling to face. 5 years ago, we believed that removing humanity from our community would bring stability and order to the galaxy. We were wrong. The admission sent ripples of murmur through the assembled delegates. For 5 years, many had clung to the hope that the problems plaguing the galaxy were temporary, that alien civilization would adapt and recover. The statistics made it clear that adaptation was not happening. Delegate Rickstall's crystal body flashed with nervous energy. President Morkith, surely the economic problems are temporary. Our species survived for thousands of years before humans joined the galactic community. Morkith nodded slowly. Yes, we survived. But we did not thrive the way we did with humanity as part of our community. Director Morgan, Please present your analysis." The intelligence director stepped forward, looking older and more tired than he had 5 years ago. "The data is clear. In every measurable category, galactic civilization has declined since humanity's departure. But the numbers only tell part of the story." He activated the main display, showing a complex web of connections between different species. This represents galactic cooperation before humanity's departure. Notice the connections between species that rarely interacted directly. The display changed, showing the same web 5 years later. Many of the connections had disappeared, leaving isolated clusters of species that only worked with their close allies. Humanity served as universal mediators, Morgan explained. They could communicate with species that could not communicate effectively with each other. They could combine technologies that individual species could not integrate alone. They could find solutions that required thinking outside the limitations of any single species approach. Dr. Zanara stood up from her seat. Her once bright eyes were dim with exhaustion from fighting medical crises that seemed to have no solutions. "The Korthak plague has now spread to 47 systems. We have lost more lives in the past year than in the previous 10 years combined. Every solution we try fails because we cannot replicate the human approach to complex problem solving." Commander Keflu's compound eyes reflected the light from the displays as he added his own testimony. "Pirate activity in the Outer Rim has increased by 300%. Our military responses have become so predictable that raiders know exactly how we will react to any situation. Without human strategic input, we have become easy targets." The reports continued for hours, trade networks failing, research projects abandoned, diplomatic relationships deteriorating, small conflicts growing into larger ones, because there were no effective mediators to find compromise solutions. But the most shocking report came from an unexpected source. The Nexus Collective Representative Unit 7 had requested special permission to address the Council. Artificial intelligences rarely participated in Council sessions, preferring to communicate through written reports. Statement: The Nexus Collective has reached a unanimous conclusion regarding the human departure, Unit 7 announced in its mechanical voice. Analysis: Human cognitive patterns demonstrated unique synthesis capabilities between organic and synthetic thinking processes. Assessment: Galactic civilization efficiency has decreased by 43% without human interface protocols. The chamber fell silent. If even the artificial intelligences recognized humanity's unique value, then the loss was more profound than anyone had imagined. Inquiry: Has the Council attempted to re-establish contact with the human collective? Unit 7 continued. Morkith. Tentacles curled with embarrassment. We have tried many times. All communication attempts have been unsuccessful. We do not even know where humanity has gone. Intelligence Director Morgan stepped forward again. That brings me to the most disturbing part of our current situation. Long-range sensors continue to detect massive energy signatures from unexplored regions of space. The construction projects that humans appear to be undertaking have grown to unprecedented scales. The main display showed a star map with huge energy readings marked in red. The readings had grown significantly over the past 5 years, suggesting industrial activity that dwarfed anything in Council space. Our best analysts estimate that humanity is building something at least 10 times larger than the largest Council project ever attempted, Morgan reported. We have no idea what it is, but the energy requirements suggest technology beyond our current understanding. The implications were clear to everyone in the chamber. While the galaxy struggled with declining cooperation and stalled innovation, humanity was apparently thriving in isolation and building something magnificent. Velshin of the Arcturians stood up, his blue skin pale with worry. What if they never want to come back? What if we have lost them forever? The question hung in the air like a weight. For 5 years, Many delegates had assumed that humans would eventually return, perhaps humbled by isolation and willing to accept council restrictions. The growing evidence suggested that humanity was not struggling in isolation, they were flourishing. "There is something else," Morgan said quietly. "We have received reports that 3 smaller species have made contact with humans outside council space. The Dultari, the Proxima Centauri colonists, and the Tau Ceti merchants have all reported successful trade relationships with human settlements." The chamber erupted in surprised voices. This was the first confirmation that humanity was still engaged with other species, just not with council members. "What kind of trade relationships?" asked Delegate Corval of the Hegemony. "According to these reports, humans are offering advanced technology and medical assistance in exchange for rare materials and cultural exchanges. The species involved described the arrangements as mutually beneficial, partnerships based on respect and cooperation. The contrast was obvious to everyone present. While the Council had tried to control and restrict humanity, these smaller species were apparently being offered genuine partnerships. President Morketh raised one of his tentacles for silence. "It is time for this Council to acknowledge the truth. We made a grave error in judgment regarding humanity. We allowed fear and prejudice to cloud our reasoning. We treated potential partners as threats, and cooperation as a weakness to be exploited." He paused, looking around the chamber at delegates who had spent years arguing that humanity needed to be controlled. "The humans offered us their friendship, their knowledge, their unique perspectives on solving problems. They asked only to be treated as equals, to be allowed to grow and explore at their own pace. Instead, we demanded that they conform to our expectations and accept limitations that we would never accept for our own species." The formal resolution that followed was unanimous, though it came 5 years too late. The Council officially acknowledged its error in judgment regarding humanity. All previous restrictions and limitations were rescinded. A standing invitation for diplomatic contact was established, but there was a problem. The Council had no way to deliver this message to humanity. All known human settlements had been abandoned. All diplomatic channels had been closed. Humanity had vanished so completely that the galaxy had no way to apologize for its mistakes. The final speaker of the day was Dr. Zinara. She walked slowly to the center of the chamber, carrying a small data pad with a message she had saved. "For 5 years, before the humans left, Dr. Carol White sent me a personal message. She had worked with our medical teams for 8 years and had become a close friend. I would like to share her final words with you." She activated the data pad, and Dr. White's voice filled the chamber through the translation systems. "My dear Zinara, by the time you hear this message, we will be gone. I want you to know that leaving breaks my heart. The work we did together, the lives we saved, the friendships we built, these were the best years of my career. But we cannot stay where we are not wanted." The recording continued. "We tried to show the galaxy that diversity makes us all stronger. We tried to demonstrate that different ways of thinking, when combined with respect and cooperation, can solve problems that no single approach can handle. Perhaps someday the Council will understand this lesson. Perhaps someday they will realize that we were never trying to dominate or control anyone. We were only trying to help build something better together." The message ended with words that would be remembered long after the session concluded. "We hope that someday the galaxy will be ready for true partnership. When that day comes,